is we have data and statistics, we have trends we look at, but those inform part of what we do, but there's all this nuance involved that is really down to individual properties, personalities, behavior, things that we cannot predict with trends and statistics, and things are going to come up that are going to change the trajectory of your deal or your search, and how you react to that is going to either close doors or open doors. And that's the mindset portion of it.
Good afternoon, Molly.
Hi, Nicole. How's it going?
So good. How are you?
I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so excited to be on today with Molly Campbell Palmer from our Wellesley office. Molly has been getting so creative lately with just everything she's doing. She's trying things, and I really commend her for that. And we were talking about how this time of year is just, it's a good time to potentially find a good deal, but it's not just about finding it, it's about securing it. She's just been doing a lot of things that are creative for her clients to get that done. And so we're getting on today. We're going to dive into sort of her market, what that's been looking like, and what people might be faced with that are looking to make that move or willing to make a move at this time of year. So whether you're an agent listening, just for some tips or talking points for your clients, we kind of outline all the value that there is, especially this time of year, like I said, to the buyer agent, which is a conversation that's ongoing right now. Or if you're a consumer listening and you're in that, I need to sell to buy, or how do I find something off market, and all of those type of things. We cover all of that. Lending, and just the general state of multiple offers, things like that. So very excited to dive in today. So without further ado, I'll have Molly introduce herself.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Molly Campbell Palmer. I work out of the Wellesley, Massachusetts office, and I also live in Wellesley. So I some days don't even leave the town border. And that's kind of by design, but I really love living and working in the community where my family is and my friends are, and kind of understanding it on such a endemic level. You know what I mean? So
Okay, Molly. So before we officially kick off, I want to just let you walk us through high level. First of all, just which markets you're in, and then what the activity in your market looks like right now, because I know we have people listening from all over, and I think that's very relevant for the conversation.
oh, yeah, absolutely. So my office is in Wellesley, Massachusetts. That's also where I live. I work primarily in this town, but also the surrounding adjacent towns. So that would be Needham, Weston, Natick, Dover, Westwood. We are seen as a high-end market. In Wellesley, the median sale this year has been around 2.2. The market is steady, which will feel like a drop to some people who have been following along recently because it was extreme before. So we're seeing a slight shift, but no shortage of demand. Just we've shifted into a pace that is less frenzied than it's been in the past.
That's good. Great to know. And I think that's so important to know as we launch into this conversation, because while we're saying, oh, it might be a good time for, finding a little bit of a deal, or maybe even just taking a minute to breathe when you're putting an offer in, it's still busy. The supplies, the demand is still very high. So I want to make sure we kind of laid that out before we get into the conversation here.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have so much great support at Gibson Sotheby's, which has made me feel really welcome and allowed me to be brave in certain ways when it matters. And I think all of that bravery or that creativity comes back to serving my clients, and what I really try to adapt to what I see them needing and how they like to communicate, how they like to interact, shop, all of the things. If I can react to that and adjust, I try to position myself as a modern agent, like a modern approach, because we have some, you know, you have the balance between experience and then really being, we're down to the minute. Wellesley is a very desirable place to live and the surrounding towns. So it's competitive in every way. It's competitive as an agent for getting listings, it's competitive as a buyer. So everything I do is trying to stay on the edge so that my clients have an advantage.
And I was talking with someone on our team who helps me put these together. And she was just like, getting a deal is always something that's sort of like cliche, and people always want to talk about that with real estate, right? Like anyone that sees you at a party, like, oh, like, well, is that a deal? And you're like, well, I can honestly say, especially in the competitive like New England market, there's only so many deals that are going to be found. There's supply and demand or basic economics, but this time of year, and we've said it so many times on the podcast, this time of year is when people really can, due to multiple factors. And I'm going to let you go through that. But in thinking about you and the creative way that you've come at the business, just securing those deals and getting creative for your clients to make sure that you can. And I'm not saying that you can't year round, but that's why we want to do this topic right now, so that this is something that agents can listen to and be like, huh, like, let me try that. Or even something that consumers can listen to and say, well, that's a great thing for me to think about. So I wanted to just like anecdotally go through with you what you've had going on lately and how you've been helping your clients find these deals, secure these deals, and what creative things you're doing to differentiate yourself as their agent.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because and that we went in this direction because there is this great balance that we can approach the process with, and that is the balance between like a process that we do no matter what time of year it is, and then a reaction to the market that you're in. And I think what you're alluding to is the seasonality of the end of the year in general every year. And I think us all being hyper aware right now of the election activities that are happening and that always affect or tend to affect um, all sorts of human behavior, which factor heavily in this process. So I would say that I have a very tried and true process that I'm always refining, but I stick to it. And that is, you don't call me and meet me and then we go look at a house, right? Like I have an onboarding call where we really flesh out clients and I, first I start with what they want to know. I don't dive into what I know because I want to understand how to tailor the process towards goals and concerns for my clients. And then we chip away at what's going to happen, how it's probably going to go down, things to look out for, so that that information comes to a client before you even look at a house. So that when the right one comes or the right situation presents itself, that they're very well positioned to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Then we talk about what's happening right now today, this minute, not this week, like this minute in the market. Where are we seeing things land in terms of days on markets, pricing, activity, and how do we use any of that to a buyer's advantage? Because as you said, we still have more buyers than sellers. So
Mm-hmm.
if we're talking about the buyer, we want to talk about how they can't really let their guard down. So we're going to understand the process before it's time to make decisions, and then we're going to tailor it for strategy in today's market. And that's kind of how
Awesome.
we merge.
So one thing to dive a little bit deeper into that can obviously be a concern and a hurdle for people. You just said we have more buyers than sellers. A lot of people, especially young families that, expected to upgrade, they're kind of stuck in that I need to sell to buy.
Mm-hmm.
So, someone comes to you right now, and we know that, right around this like Thanksgiving holiday time is a good time to find a deal. Because if someone needs to move right now, and they don't want to sit, that's just sort of what it is. But there's probably a lot of people on the sidelines being like, I would upgrade, I'd love to get a deal, but I need to sell to buy. So to dive into something that, like I said, an anecdote that could be a concern, but maybe they've reached out to you, what is it that you're telling them to do?
I'm telling them that it's a very specific version of stress to sell and buy at the same time. So we're just going to say it. We're going to name it and get it out of the way. This will has the high potential to be a stressful situation, but don't worry because people do this every day. They do this successfully every day. There are processes and tools we can use. One of those I can't stress enough is your financial team on board early and often, right? So running through scenarios of, say tomorrow your dream home comes on the market. How do we secure that without you missing out? We're always trying to avoid FOMO and regret. We don't want you to feel like you've missed out or regret an opportunity you didn't take. I recommend you get in touch with your lender if you're going to need a mortgage right away, and any other financial team members that you have that handle retirement funds, cash reserves, flow, budgeting, all of that, and work up scenarios financially where you can make a decision that gets you to your goal with minimal risk and have all that information at the outset before, like I said, before it's time to make a decision, know where that stands. So if we found the house tomorrow, what are the steps we could put in place financially to get us to closing? Whoever your listing agent is, many times that's me at the same time. I'll give you an example. We a client who's buying and selling right now, we're in P&S for both the purchase and the sale. We started the conversation 6 or 8 months ago about them upgrading for size. And I went to the house to do a refresh walkthrough, and their front tree was blooming with the most magnificent flowers in pink. And I was like, we're getting photos tomorrow. We're going to have them in the can. Whenever you go to sell, that part will be done and it will position your home in the best light because it's going to maximize,
Mhm.
your curb appeal, which is so important. That first picture on Redfin and Zillow. So financial team, preparation, starting the conversation super early, and then taking your calculated risks.
Yeah, I love that. And prepping, just like nuts and bolts, you said it, but really diving deeper into that is so many people think, well, we'll list, right? Well, we're ready. It's like, are you really? Getting the photos, internal photo, like in photos inside the house means that you actually had to get the house to the point where it was ready. And it's so much better off letting your agent get you to that point where the photos are taken. You're almost like everything's in MLS. You're ready to press one button because if there is still a home sale contingency in the mix for you, and I know that that's not really going to fly often, but just doubling down and like getting into that nitty gritty with the consumer. If someone is listening, it's just that's really where you want to get to. You want to hit to where you're just hitting one button and Molly's launching that listing because that's going to make someone realize you're ready to go. And even yourself, you're not ready to go. I promise you're not. If you aren't ready for the photos, you're not ready. You think that you are, you're like, the house is in good shape. And then you're going to go home and be like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do before we can hit go. And God forbid, that got accepted and now you have to make that happen. So prepping, we just had someone today in the meeting from Olympia talking about that they'll do free storage for clutter. And I was like, what a fantastic idea for these people that are like, I want to buy something, but I'm not really sure. And it's like, that's a great first step because it puts you in motion. So just anything to get you in motion and prepped.
And if you're resisting doing that preparation, it kind of goes back to you and I had mentioned mindset the other day. I mean, like, look within. Why? What's holding you back from not putting yourself in a position to be successful? Because, you know, there's all these things that have to line up for you to have success. But the number one thing is like, you have to be ready.
Yeah. No, the mindset is so critical. And you had mentioned that. Can you dive into that a little bit, like how you help people? Because it is competitive and it gets really discouraging.
It is. And like, I'm just a mindset person kind of in general. So in life, it's so important. And that's not any different for this real estate purchase and sale transaction. But the thing is we have data and statistics, we have trends we look at, but those inform part of what we do. But there's all this nuance involved that is really down to individual properties, personalities, behavior, things that we cannot predict with trends and statistics. And things are going to come up that are going to change the trajectory of your deal or your search. And how you react to that is going to either close doors or open doors. And that's the mindset portion of it. And a lot of that is, trusting your agent to guide you through it. I mean, there's such a cliche of you'll always end up where you're supposed to, but it's very, very, very true. And
It's
if
the most annoying thing when you're going through it
it's
because I've
so
been on
annoying,
both ends multiple times, but it is true.
it's so true. I mean, I can tell you literally yesterday a conversation I had with darling buyer clients of mine who lost 2 weeks in a row. They did everything right. They came out, they had clean offers, high offers, great relationships with the sellers and the selling agents. And twice in a row, they lost out in multiple offers. So, by the way, multiple offers are still happening in certain markets. Just make sure you know that. And the last one they lost out on last week was a real heartbreaker. It was the seller was saying, we wanted you to have it, but it's business, it's not personal, but everything we could do, we did. It was clean, all the things, got in with the pre-inspection, and they were pretty bummed when they didn't get it, but they picked themselves back up and they tried again, and they got out and they found another house that they absolutely loved. We got in there and did all the mechanics that we could. We were easy to work with. We were fast. We asked what the sellers wanted, and as much as we could, we gave it to them, and they ended up getting the house, and they're over the moon. But the words that came out of their mouths yesterday was, we really lucked out by not getting that last house.
Mhm.
And we feel like there's karma at play where we, missed out on one house and then ended up with the other, because the addendum to the story is, right after I left their inspection, which went really well, the listing agent from the house they missed out on last week called me and said, this deal is not staying together. Do your clients want to come back in? And they said, we're so happy.
Wow.
We're so happy we didn't get that house, because now we have
Yes.
a house, which is a dream for them. So, those stories are true and they happen all the time. And that's why we say you'll end up where you're supposed to, but especially in your first time going through it, it's very hard to see that.
For sure, and it's sad because it's like I'm a little bit separate from the emotion of real estate because I've been in real estate and I've done like, I don't even know what we said the other day, 8 or 9 transactions myself in less than 10 years. And just because that was a goal of mine. Like I was obsessed with getting a little studio and I was by 25 and it was my thing. And then it was like, okay, like then we did this and then we did that and trade this one in. But so I can move without emotion, but this resonated with me the other day. I have a point. I will land this plane. I was talking to an agent on the South Shore, and she was talking about her daughter bought a house in the Metro West, and how sad it was that it was so competitive that she was trying to help her daughter, and they were so unemotional about it, and they weren't people in real estate. They had just gone to so many, and they were just going to take a house. They were like, "Yeah, it's fine, it works." And she was like, it like hit me because that being said, all the transactions I've done, they were like in the city and small or a cottage and a rental. But like, I finally feel like we bought our house that was like, we were going to live in and like, have our kids in. And we're going to probably move one more time. But I'm trying to remember that we need to get like emotional about this next one because I personally come at it without that. And you can't do that. You can't divorce yourself because like that's the mindset piece. You can't be like, oh my gosh, I've been to so many freaking houses. I've put in so many offers. I'm just fried. Like we just need a house. Like you can't do that. This purchase is way too big. And you need to continue to work with someone like you who can keep you in that good mindset, who can keep you convinced it's the best house ever. And you need to be excited about this. This can't just be utility, unless it's an investment or whatever. But I think that that's such an important piece that you brought up that I just haven't heard a lot of people bring up. And it is such an easy time to get discouraged and exhausted and be like, we have small kids. Just need the space. I got to get out of the city. Like, let's just do it. And it's like, that's not what we want to hear. And it sounds like you help people like out of that and like, let's really love your house. So I'm happy to hear that. And I think it's more valid than we probably realize. I would love for you to dive a little bit into off-market properties, which is a hot button topic. And I'm sure something you're dealing with a lot, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, if we can tie that back to the seasonality that we talked about at the beginning, be there are things you can do to find off-market properties, and in many ways that can be an advantage for a buyer. It's not usually something we recommend for a seller, except for extenuating circumstances where, privacy is important or disruptions have to be avoided. But generally, for a buyer, that property hasn't been exposed to as much other buyers, so you have less competition. And the ways we access a lot of off markets, or I would put coming soons in a related category, is through first and foremost broker relations. So someone who is enmeshed in the local climate, they will get the whispers, the text messages with other agents, the did you know, or your own company will release information before it goes public that something's coming on the market. And then, so that's one way. We have the Top Agent Network, which is a resource for top producing agents, where they can market homes outside of the MLS. and you can access that information as an agent for your buyers. You can also use it for your sellers. And then I would say this time of year, my little tip and trick is your withdrawn list, like the withdrawn report on MLS, especially as we get into November and December, you will have sellers. And I think it's important that anyone looking at the sales side of this, listing side of this, hears this too, that your deal will come together, and not to lose confidence if your home takes a little longer this time of year to stay strong. If your value's been set, we're in a logical place. Days on market don't mean you need to reduce. That's that. The withdrawn and the canceled or expired this time of year, that list is important because some people will list their home hoping they sell it prior to the holiday season. If they don't, they will pull it off until after the holidays because they don't want to be disrupted for any number of reasons. They're traveling, or they're hosting, or their decorations, or the children, and the kind of Christmas time, Hanukkah time, Thanksgiving. But it's still a property for sale, and it's going to come back. I sold one last year around this time. Was on the market briefly. They pulled off and said, you know what, we're going to wait till spring so that we don't have to be bothered, and we think we'll get more in spring. But I had flagged it for my people and brought it to them, and they ended up securing the property technically off market. So if you have that running list, that can kind of give you an edge of some kind of hidden inventory this time of year.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And I agree. I think it's become tough to talk about off markets because, like you said, our stance really is you just have to know you're not going to get in front of as many people. And there's a lot of agents selling that for their own good. But then there's some people that really would move something off market. I just actually gave this example this morning. Like, I have a 1 and a 2-year-old. We're thinking about a move. I don't really, if somebody came to me with the right number and knowing myself that I'd probably be leaving some money on the table. And that's like basically what you need to understand if you're moving off market. But is your time or whatever, is it worth it? Your privacy, that's a personal decision. But if someone's pushing off market to you, you need to ask more questions because any agent's going to be able to tell you both sides, right? There's going to be circumstances that might work for you. That would
Right.
work for me. Just with how hectic my life is and the stage of life my kids are in, and just being able to say, okay, we can go and we can move on. But that's also, again, me being very educated and knowing that there's going to be money left on the table. But you need to be able to come to terms with that too. Or there may be, right? We don't know always for sure. And so I love that piece, and I wanted to make sure we talked about that because obviously it is important to find an agent that's really good to work with in the community. I don't think everyone realizes how important that is. It doesn't matter who you work for in terms of a broker, agents that get along with everyone and deals go smoothly. Those are the agents you want to be associating with, especially when you want to, like you're saying, secure these deals. I can't tell you how many times I hear that an offer gets accepted because someone knows that agent's going to get it to the closing table and they're going to be no drama and they're going to be really good to work with because it's a team effort at that point once the offer's signed. So making sure if you're feeling a little ick about your agent, or you're getting that vibe and you're like, whatever, like who cares? People care. If you're feeling like this person might be hard to get along with, chances are the listing agent might have the same fear, and that's a valid fear. If they're going to complicate the deal and potentially not be able to get it done, then they have to work for their seller and warn their seller about that. So those are all things to think about.
Yeah, I
Like
call
you said.
it influencer. Like, we are actually influencers, to put it in a term that gets thrown around a lot. Definitely the listing agent is an influencer because they're a gatekeeper of the perception of a buyer coming in. But your buyer's agent's an influencer too. I mean, they can do things throughout the process that are beyond your offer, that like dollars and cents of your offer. So kind of, if you want to think of your agent like that, I mean, that's how I explain it to people.
I love that. And then just quickly jumping into the lending piece, the rates, we touched on that a little bit at the beginning. It's funny you said the election. And it's like so funny because like we know that the election doesn't actually impact the market, but the people's idea that it does actually makes it impact the market because it's like so confusing. It's like it doesn't actually do anything, like historically speaking, but everybody's fear over it doing something actually does make the market slow down, which is just funny because we create our own realities. Same with the rates. Everybody's obsessing over the Fed rate. They don't know.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's super macro and everything we
Yes,
do is really micro. So that's why
that's such a good way to put it.
it should make sense.
Um, But just talking us through, like we said, like the Fed rate really isn't the interest rate. People don't get that. People get nervous. What are you telling people that need lending right now that you're trying to get these deals secured for them? Any tips you have for them at the moment, sort of ease their mind or help them through?
Yeah, a lender can make a big difference in your viability as a buyer and in a competitive situation, but just in general for your like also stress and quality of life. So you want to choose someone first and foremost that you trust and who is responsive. That's very important. We are time sensitive. And then the nice trick that I'd like to employ here that is a product that many of these lenders have. They have different names for it depending on who the lender is. I've heard it called pre-commitment. I know one of the big guys has another branded trademark name for it, but it's essentially where the only thing left to do for the loan is basically plug in the address. So this is a higher level of pre-approval, hence the different name pre-commitment, where your finances, your financial picture has been very thoroughly flushed out to eliminate much concern that once it comes to underwriting for any reason other than a massive impact like the loss of employment, the loan will get underwritten because the information has been understood. So real world example of where you can on paper look like you should be pre-approved, but what gets stopped up in underwriting is if a portion of your compensation is RSUs, restricted stock units, right? Like, so this is valid and important for our neck of the woods where we have a lot of people who work in tech, and that is how their compensation is. Well, underwriters stop when they see that, and it takes them longer to understand your strength and viability as a borrower, and that can gum up the works in your loan. You want to flush all that out and find out that there's not going to be any hiccups in terms of that going forward, and a pre-commitment is one way to do that. It also allows, I find, my clients to be much more comfortable waiving a mortgage contingency. They feel like their lender, when they have a conversation, my understanding is the lender basically says, there's kind of no way you're not getting this loan. It would have to be
Mhm.
something massive that happens. So you can feel confident waiving your mortgage contingency, which makes an offer more attractive, less
Mhm.
for the seller.
Yeah, and lender will let you know like if you can really do that, obviously. And then the refis, there's a lot of people offering free refis within the first year, and just realize that like if everyone else is shying away, especially this time of year that's quiet anyways due to interest rates, and you can get something, you can get it at a better price right now, right? Like you're saying. I'm just kind of putting it into more layman's terms. Like it's just I want to make sure that that's like drives home is just even if the rate seems a little high now, if you get a better price and you refinance, you can never go back and get that price, but you can always go back and get the rate. So lenders will talk you through all that. And that's the part of the team, right? And clearly you have great connections, and anybody you work with that's like Molly is going to be able to make those introductions for you.
Yeah, they say date the rate, marry the house.
Yes. All right, Molly. Well, I feel like we covered so much today, and I'm so grateful for your time. I don't know if you have anything you want to leave everybody with that's listening here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nice to hear the preparation that this process is about making decisions for both buyers and sellers, just all of it. Sometimes the decisions start different depending on which side of the table you're on, and the goal should be to get yourself to a point where you're clear on the decision you're making and comfortable with the decision you're making. So all the prep work we do in the beginning drives towards that goal. And then there's always going to be some element of stress and kind of nerves. I say butterflies are normal, but like nausea is not. So we want you to have the butterflies of excited for your new house. Maybe it's your biggest purchase you've ever made, but you should feel comfortable with the decisions because you're clear about the information that back them up. And that will be your way to the least stressful version of this process.
Yes, I love that. And you know what I realized as we were talking through this, and it's going to sound like I intended and I didn't, is everybody's talking right now about what does a buyer agent do? What value do they bring? It's like, this is the perfect, we accidentally just walked through so much value and so much that people are doing and thinking about for you and trying, like you said, you kicked us off with saying, because I said kind of finding those deals, and you were like, no, it's securing them. It's not
Yeah.
just finding them. You can locate a deal all you want, but you have to have all the pieces in place to actually get it done because it is that competitive. So for anybody that's out there listening and thinking, what a buyer agents do, or maybe you are a buyer agent, and you want to articulate that value, we just accidentally went through it all. So thank you so much for everything today, and keep doing what you're doing. I love everything that you're doing, and we'll continue to follow along. And anyone that wants to look for Molly, look for Molly, anyone that wants to contact Molly or reach out, feel free to ask me for her contact information, and I'll also include that in the show notes if that's okay with you, including social media handles.
Yes, give me a follow. Come along.
Awesome. Thanks, Molly. Have a great day.